and welcome to today's Wetland walk with myself, Stina, and the fabulous friend behind the camera, Rachel.
Hi, friends.
We are going to just do a
We're
little
gonna walk
today.
and wander, and
You're on the Cushman Trail here in Gig Harbor, so
it's a fantastic place if you are into plants because it's a wetland space. So the ground is saturated for a part of the year, and we've got this really great boardwalk that goes out over the wetlands so you can walk through that area without disturbing the sensitive plants. But we've actually pulled off the trail a little bit and got distracted because we found some cool stuff to talk about. So if you want to mention in the comments where you're watching from, that's great for us to know. Otherwise, just tune in, ask your questions, and we'll try to get to them if we can. So Stina, tell me the first thing that you saw. Or the first thing that you noticed.
Smelling the skunk cabbage that I want to talk about later.
Yes.
But,
Okay, we'll talk about the skunk cabbage.
In this little neck of the woods, we came up to this funky leaf that has something peculiar going on. And if we just take a tiny little peek, you can see there's little maggots inside.
Ooh,
so
somebody's eaten that leaf, and here's another one.
made it a little cocoon.
And this is a really cool species. It flowers pretty early in the year, but this is our native plum species. And you may be thinking, plum, ooh, that sounds delicious. These plums don't get very large at all, unfortunately, but they are edible when they're nice and...
I accidentally flipped out our little caterpillar
You
friend.
killed the caterpillar.
But I'd be curious, maybe this is
Yeah, maybe it's a bad
a
species.
butterfly or a moth?
Some kind of little...
But I will very carefully put it back in its little leaf home.
Love it.
It's so cute.
So we are standing underneath a quite large willow tree here. You can see the street lamp for some scale. And some of it has died. So there's a couple of these dead branches, and I can tell that they're dead by looking and seeing that there are no leaves, but also by the presence of this shelf fungus here. So these polypore fungus grow on decaying wood, and they are a sure sign that the tree that they're growing on is dead, because this is a species that very rarely lives on living trees. Here's another example. And this is a kind of a perennial type of fungus, so it's not like a mushroom that's going to kind of come and go, and this is one that persists throughout the year. And this is the fruiting body. So the rest of the fungus is going to be in mycelium, these little root-like structures that travel up through the dead, decaying wood. Oh yeah, a little bit of licorice fern up in there. Why is it called licorice fern?
Because it tastes like licorice.
Howard's asking, are we tree huggers? And I think the answer is not yet.
Because this is
Not yet. We'll get to another tree.
Howard, but this is another reason why the Himalayan Blackberry is such a problem, because it is keeping me from sneaking in to hug this tree. Like, these are, I don't know if you can look at these razor sharp spines.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna mess with that. So no, I'm not gonna hug this tree today.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of invasive species in these disturbed areas where people have kind of come in and developed. And Himalayan Blackberry is one of the worst offenders for invading a wetland. And right now it's pretty green and flexible, but these canes will harden and become kind of woody and stiff. And then they arc upwards and outwards, and then that spreads. And you get more and more and more of those blackberries. This is...
Of course, they're delicious.
They are delicious, which is...
seed pollination or seed dispersal, because birds will eat them.
You can always tell when the
Beautiful
blackberries
purple.
are ripe, when the bird poop turns purple.
But those seeds then get dispersed and
And then we have more and more and more of the blackberry. It's really hard to eradicate. Here's another plant that's really common in disturbed areas. This is called dock. And it is one of the hardest... D-O-C-K. It is hard to pull out, and it also is quite prolific. So you can see all the seeds.
Are these sticky?
Oh,
No.
that was a lizard that just ran away from us.
We saw a snake earlier.
We saw a snake earlier. Maybe this is going to turn into a reptile walk. Hey, little lizard. Don't mind me. I heard it first, and then my eyes just saw a little brown lizard scurrying into the thicket there.
Well, there's
But
a plant here that reminds me of a lizard.
why does it remind you? Oh yes, look at this lizard tail right here.
Yeah. And then the horsetail. So lizards are able to shed their tail and regrow it, which is super strange because like that's part of their spine. But the horsetail has these funny little segments that to me come off like a little lizard tail.
Okay, that's pretty wild. Horsetails are a very prehistoric plant. In the fossil record, horsetails were the trees. They were the large dominant species in the time of the dinosaurs, which is cool. And right now they're all just coming up, and eventually they'll kind of brush out and kind of actually look like a horse's tail.
I like whatever the word is. Horsetails contain silica,
Yes.
which is a glass.
So they're good for
Things.
like
Yeah.
cleaning
For
your
the
dishes,
scrub.
washing your hands, scouring. Anytime you got to scour.
Very fun.
Very fun. All right, well, I'm going to come back over here and look at this cool, like, lily plant. Oh, here. So, this is a horsetail, like, bloom. It's not quite like a flower. It's got this weird structure on it, but that's the flowery part of that plant. Oh, look at this. What do we have here?
It appears to be a very lucky clover.
Or unlucky. It's
Or
been spray
unlucky,
painted.
yes.
There's some utility marking that's happened here. Definitely catches your eye though. That pink stands out like this really pretty flower here. This is in the rose family, and I can tell this lots of different ways, but seeing as how it has 5 petals and thorns.
How are you telling this apart from the Himalayan Blackberry, which is...
Similar. So, so this one here has more woody stems that are, they are kind of more thick and less hollow. The leaves are also different. So these are really more serrated and almost folded, whereas the Himalayan blackberries are kind of velvety on top, with their thorns hidden below it. But I want to show this cool little, I think it's a lily, but don't quote me on that.
Trillium?
It's not trillium, but it's
Oh,
a
wait,
similar
yeah.
species. Yeah, so one thing I really highly recommend if you are going to walk the trail and be curious about the wildlife or the plant life around you, is to have a good app with you. And that app that I recommend is Seek or iNaturalist. And those are both produced by the same company, but iNaturalist is a little more complicated to use. Seek is a little more basic, but both are really great at identifying plants with just a photograph. So I could take a picture of either these berries or the flower that's forming them, and know fairly quickly what we're looking at.
Is that thimbleberry?
I can't be sure if it's thimbleberry or salmonberry. I think salmonberry, because the thimbleberries are a little more different. How do you know? You can tell it is this because of the way that it is.
Look at this ostrich bird!
Yes, ostrich bird, beautiful, love it.
Just change the plant subject.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Down in here, this one is got really complicated leaves, and so you could learn to identify the different leaves. So these would be what we would call compound leaves, and because they're highly branched. These leaves right here are what we call opposite, because the leaves originate on either side of the branch from the same spot. Let's find an alternate.
Can we ask some discovery questions? So I
Yeah,
think
ask some discovery questions. What do you want to know?
it's the same flower you were thinking was in the rose.
It is in the rose family.
Are
Yeah.
salmon berries in the rose
They
family?
are.
Well, there you have it.
There you have it.
folks.
Now you know.
I didn't know that.
Oh, well, most of the edible fruits we eat are in the rose family. So cherries and plums and apples, all in that rose family. Here we've got this great sword fern that's just coming out of sort of the fiddlehead stage.
So curly.
Yeah, and they come up and they look like little like lollipops almost. So that's a nice one. All right, let's actually hit the trail a little bit, Stina. We pulled off because we were just curious about the fungus on this willow tree. Should we go to the right or to the left?
To the right.
To the right. Why not? Let's do it. Let's go check out a map. That's a good idea when you're walking to understand your bearings a bit. So this is the Cushman Trail. We are like up here somewhere, close-ish to here. And we are over the wetland that's going to feed Donkey Creek. So if we continued straight where my finger is pointing, we're going to run right into Burnham Drive. And that is going to connect right at Donkey Creek Park. So we're standing on ground that is feeding that little salmon stream that we have. And part of the reason why Donkey Creek is able to house salmon is because it has a source of water all year round. And so here we can kind of look out over this swampy wetland section of the trail, and you can see the boardwalk built above it. And maybe if you have good eyesight, you can see that there's some water down in there. Oh, there's a snake. A tiny little snake. Can you see it? There it goes. Oh my gosh. That was just a little one. All right. Definitely a garter snake. We have very few snakes on here in the western side of the state. Can Stina get a picture of it? I mean, you're a woman of many talents, so maybe. But garter snakes, not to be confused with garden snakes. Garter, like a woman would wear to hold her stockings up back in the day. A garter snake is not much bigger than a garter. They're nice, thin snakes. They eat slugs, so they're a pretty valuable species to have in your garden.
They don't respond to...
So when you go, pss, 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 come here, snakey. I don't know how you attract a snake. I don't know. Sound like a slug? Good job. Hopefully the sounds of the birds are coming through because there are tons of songbirds that are calling out right now. That was a red-winged blackbird. That's about one of the only birds that I can definitively identify. But we've seen robins earlier today that were kind of hanging out. So nice and interesting. But sorry, before I was talking about a snake, I was talking about these wetlands, these sort of depression areas that are fed by this highly sloping land on either side, and all the rain that's going to fall on that ground is then going to flow down into this basin and collect here and then slowly feed into Donkey Creek over time. So even in the summer months when we don't have a ton of water flowing or landing on our ground to feed that creek, this place still just feeds out that water. And that's helpful for the animals that live in the creek, especially our salmon. Oh.
He doesn't do that.
All right. So this is a pretty well-used trail. Lots of people. It's great walking. And probably my favorite feature of the trail is that it is a permeable surface. So rain that falls on this pavement is actually going to go down into the ground. And that is really great. Helps get the water to infiltrate down. But let's go check out some of the heart of the wetland here and show you a few more wetland plants as we go along. Might as well talk about this one. This is alder. I believe red alder, but don't quote me on that. Marine biologist, remember, people. What else can we see from here? Okay, so there is another species of blackberry here that's got the little white flowers. That is our native species. It's called trailing blackberry, sometimes evergreen blackberry. And it kind of snakes along the ground for the most part, and it blooms much earlier than the Himalayan blackberry. So we see that kind of ripening in, you know, the flowers are on it now, and then it's going to ripen by probably June or so. Lovely chorus of bird song. It's beautiful today, even though it was raining when we got here.
Which really, I mean, it's spring.
It's the time of year for rain.
Because a lack of rain will be really tricky for places like Donkey Creek, because like now is the time to really fill up these wetlands that are going to supply the water for those streams. So
Yes, good point.
rain is good for salmon.
Rain is good for
Even though
salmon.
the salmon are not. I would guess
They're not in. They're out by now. Yeah.
By now.
So if we're looking across in the distance, I see some vine maples, which are a beautiful species of maple that has these little leaves. And then we also have,
Green.
yeah, it's a bright green, kind of right in the middle of that little grove there. Oh, I just saw, and then I lost it. Stina, look for a hawk in that Doug fir tree. Maybe I'm seeing things, but maybe not. Here, we can talk about this plant while she's looking for some big birds. This is a species of willow, and there are many species of willows, but I could tell that it's a willow because of the rather kind of smoothish bark and these interesting flowers that make kind of a fuzzy, itty bitty teeny tiny seed. So if you've ever blown dandelions, you have an idea of kind of how small those seeds can be. And willow seeds are basically taking advantage of the wet ground that willows like to live in. That fuzzy little seed is going to drift and stick best where the ground is wet. And if the ground is wet when the willow seeds are dispersing, chances are good that it's a place that the willows can live. And they like their feet pretty wet. Oh yeah, there is water down there. Don't drop my phone.
And
Here's another willow.
pollinators. Got to see some bumblebees.
Ooh, some bumblebees.
Little bumblebees.
And then again, lots and lots of willow over here. And this is willow that has been maintained a little bit because we have these power poles here. So this willow has been trimmed, and you can see some of the fallen branches down there. But we're also can see, let me carefully climb up here. We can see a definite wetland species. This is skunk cabbage, and you can smell it before you see it. And these are huge leaves, and they have this yellow flower called a calyx that sticks up. And it looks kind of like that horsetail flower that I showed you, but it has this one strong petal kind of behind it. And it is smelly. Skunk cabbage is a really good, yeah, we can kind of see this one. Hold on, I gotta move. You can kind of see that flower just coming up to the surface. And it's actually a bunch of tiny flowers kind of housed together there. All right, shall we keep walking? You want to talk about a few more species? Yeah, why not? We're here.
There's a species with leaves.
Yeah.
There's another species with leaves.
You can tell it's a plant because of the way that it is.
I've really appreciated these wetland walks as an opportunity to learn more about plants, because most of my knowledge is about our beach creatures. So getting the chance to do some of these wetland walks in our
It's
harbor
really
parks has been quite
fun.
the treat. Yeah, learning lots.
Yeah, you get really good at kind of asking the right questions of what kind of species would I expect to find here?
Yeah, and Rachel is talking about the different kind of leaf types. Also talking about, like, are they alternating?
Yeah,
or
that's
the leaves are right across from each other.
alternating or opposite. And this is where taking a photo is great because sometimes in the moment you may miss those details, but then you can look back at it and go, oh, the leaves were pointed at the end, or they were rounded, or they, had little serrations, or
going? Which are all those little details.
Yeah.
Oh, look how cute that is.
Yeah, super cute. Oh, here's one of my favorite trees we can talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So right in here, this is the Western Red Cedar. It is a very important tree, both ecologically and culturally. The original people here have been using this for thousands of years. It's great for just about everything. You can make clothing from it, baskets. You can use it for insect repellent. You can build homes with it. It makes great decking if you're, here in the Northwest trying to select a wood that's going to withstand our wet winters. It is a very important tree species, and I love it because it's one of the few conifer trees or evergreen trees that can live right in a wetland. So not very many of those big trees can have their little roots submerged for a portion of the year, but Western Red Cedar can. So hopefully this is inspiring you to come out and enjoy our public spaces. This is a really great walking trail for families. You can do these more easy sections, but be forewarned, there are some steeper slopes along this trail if you're going to walk the whole length of it. I think it's just over 6 miles from the about the roundabouts and goes all the way nearly to the Narrows Bridge. So hopefully you're inspired to come out, and maybe you're going to keep track of what species that you can find or identify, or maybe you're just going to come out and wander and listen to the bird song and enjoy it. Oh, but here, okay, we got to talk about, this will be our last species. How about this? This is a quite large big leaf maple. And the leaves aren't quite big yet, but we can see the seeds. So the flowers are just sort of winding up. And this year's been a particularly mild year for the pollen from these. I can remember some years it just blankets everything. I drive a black car, and sometimes it's yellow with how much pollen there is. But this year wasn't too bad. And these flowers are kind of drying up at the end, and the mature fertilized seeds are developing. And they have this really cool method of seed dispersal where they have these little wings, and they work like helicopters. And so they'll fall off the tree in the fall and winter and flutter to the ground, traveling a little bit far away from the base of the parent tree, but not too far because they need the same growing conditions. So there you go. Big leaf maples, super cool, important species. And they're just pretty. I really like big leaf maples. I was gonna say, are there any seeds still left on the ground? The seeds are fairly persistent, so you can find them.
A little alder coat. Okay. Really ratty one.
Oh yeah, there's a sad maple. Does it still fly? Gotta give it the drop test.
3, 2, 1. Oh.
Yeah, got a couple spins out of it.
And then these little alder cones.
With some probably willow seeds
willow
stuck to it.
Very nice. They're so cute, as Evelyn would say.
So cute. Evelyn, if she gives you a tiny alder cone, then you're in her tribe, you're one of her people, and that is her love language right there. That's her favorite thing. I mentioned one time that I like them, and now every time she sees them, here you go. She's darling. All right, friends. Well, we're going to wrap things up and enjoy the rest of our walk as we get back to our cars. But thanks for tuning in with us and wondering a little bit about our plant life. We encourage you to come on out and enjoy these wild spaces on your own. Thanks for tuning in. Always remember to